The drive to my sister-in-law's house took just under 3 hours, and I spent most of it watching the landscape change from the familiar crowded streets of our neighborhood into something wider, greener, and quietly intimidating. My daughter Lily sat in the back seat with her headphones on, mouthing the words to whatever song was playing, completely unbothered by where we were headed. I envied her that. My husband Daniel drove the way he always did, one hand on the wheel, relaxed, occasionally tapping his thumb against the steering column to a rhythm only he could hear. He had this quality I'd always admired, this ability to move through the world without bracing himself against it. I did not share that quality. I had been bracing since Tuesday, when his brother Marcus called to confirm we were still coming to Diane's birthday party. "It'll be fine," Daniel said, without me having to say anything at all. "I know," I said. Neither of us believed me. I want to be fair to Diane. I have tried over the 6 years Daniel and I have been married to find the version of her that he grew up with, the older sister who apparently taught him how to ride a bike, who snuck him extra dessert, who called him every week during his first year of college. That Diane existed. I believe that. I just had never personally met her. The Diane I knew was polished in a way that felt like a warning. She wore her wealth quietly but precisely. Nothing flashy, nothing loud, just a consistent and careful arrangement of things that cost more than our monthly grocery budget. She lived 40 minutes outside the city in a house that her husband Garrett's family had built in the 90s, renovated twice since, and which had a driveway long enough that you couldn't see the front door from the road. We were invited every year to the summer party. We had come twice before. Both times I had driven home feeling like I'd failed some test I hadn't been told I was taking. This year felt different only because Lily was old enough to notice things. She was 9 now, which meant she was old enough to pick up on tone, old enough to feel the specific weight of being looked at and found lacking. I had dressed her carefully that morning, a pale blue sundress I'd found at a small boutique downtown, white sandals, her hair braided back the way she liked. She had looked at herself in the mirror and said she looked pretty. I had agreed with her completely and meant every word. I had dressed myself carefully, too, a green linen dress I'd had for 2 summers, still in good shape, still something I felt good wearing. Daniel wore khakis and a white button-down, sleeves already rolled to the elbow before we'd even left the house. He looked exactly like himself. I had always found that remarkable. We pulled up to the gate at the end of the driveway just past noon. There was a woman there with a clipboard, an actual clipboard for a family birthday party, who checked our names and waved us through with the particular smile of someone performing friendliness professionally. The house came into view slowly, the way things do when the approach is designed to impress. It was large and pale and surrounded by the kind of landscaping that required a team. Cars were already lined up along the sides of the driveway. I recognized none of them. Lily pulled her headphones down and looked out the window. "Uncle Marcus lives here," she asked. "He visits here," I said. "Aunt Diane lives here." "Oh." She pressed her nose briefly against the glass. "It looks like a hotel." "Yes," I agreed. "It does." Daniel found a spot near the edge of the property, and we walked toward the sound of music and voices coming from the back. Someone had set up a tent over part of the lawn. There were round tables with white cloths, a bar cart near the garden wall, and children running in loose, self-organizing groups near a fountain that I was fairly certain was just decorative. The whole scene had the quality of something staged, like a catalog photo for a lifestyle I had never considered purchasing. Diane found us within 4 minutes of our arrival. I know because I had been counting the way you count seconds during a thunderstorm, waiting for what comes next. She was wearing white. Of course she was wearing white. A wide-leg linen set that probably cost more than my dress had cost across its entire 2 years of existence. Her hair was blown out perfectly. She had a champagne flute in one hand and the expression of someone who had been anticipating this specific moment. "Daniel," she said, and hugged him the way she always did, like she was the one granting the embrace. Then she looked at me. "Nora, you came." "We came," I agreed. "Happy birthday, Diane." She glanced down at Lily. "And this must be Lily," she said. "Don't you look sweet?" The way she said sweet lodged itself somewhere in my chest like a splinter. Not a compliment, a classification. Lily, who had not yet learned to hear what words were doing underneath what they were saying, smiled and said, "Thank you." Diane directed us toward a table near the far edge of the tent. It was a perfectly nice table. It was also, I noticed immediately, the table closest to where the catering staff kept disappearing through a side door, the working entrance, the functional edge of the party where the noise of the kitchen occasionally drifted out when the door swung open. The other tables, the ones closer to the center, to the bar cart and the string quartet someone had apparently hired, were occupied by people who all seemed to know each other with the ease of long familiarity. Daniel didn't say anything about the table. He pulled out my chair and then Lily's and sat down and poured water for all three of us from the pitcher already there. He was not performing peacefulness. He was simply peaceful in the specific way of someone who has decided not to give the seating arrangement the satisfaction of matching. I had not yet made that decision. Marcus came by within the first 20 minutes and he was genuinely warm, in the way that always made me feel the Diane situation was somehow more confusing. By contrast, he was 3 years older than Daniel, worked in urban planning, and had the same easy eyes as his brother. He hugged Daniel for a long time and crouched down to ask Lily questions about her summer reading with what appeared to be actual interest. His girlfriend, Priya, sat with us for a while and was kind and funny and talked to Lily about a book series they both apparently read. It was a good hour. I began to relax in increments. Then Diane came back. She brought 2 of her friends with her, the kind of women who arrive in formation, whose presence is always slightly louder than the room requires. One of them I vaguely remembered from a previous party, the other was new. They arranged themselves around our table with the casualness of people who do not consider whether their arrival might be unwelcome. "We were just talking," Diane said, settling into an empty chair. "About Westbridge." Westbridge was the private school her daughters attended. This was, I had learned, a reliable topic. Reliable in the way that a road with one lane is reliable. It would always go the same direction. "Chloe's doing the summer intensive," one of the friends said. 3 weeks of immersive French. They actually live with host families. "That's ambitious," Daniel said mildly. "It's just what they do there," Diane said. "They really prepare them." She looked at Lily, who was at that moment trying to balance a strawberry on the edge of her fork. "Where does Lily go?" "Clearwater Elementary," I said. A pause. Very brief. Very deliberate. "Oh, that's nice," Diane said in the tone of someone confirming that something is less than nice. "Public school." "Good teachers," Daniel said. "She loves it." Diane smiled. She picked up her champagne flute. She let the subject rest, but didn't drop it the way you set something down while remaining close enough to pick it back up. Her daughters came over a few minutes later, summoned by some gesture I didn't catch. Vivian was 11 and Piper was 7, and they were dressed identically in a way that suggested coordination, in pale yellow eyelet dresses that even I could see were expensive. They stood with the posture of children who had been to enough of these things to know how to present themselves. Piper looked at Lily. Lily looked at Piper. "Hi," Lily said. "Hi," Piper said. And then, with the devastating candor of a 7-year-old who had absorbed her environment completely, she pointed at Lily's dress and said, "My mom says that brand is from a regular store." Table went quiet in the specific way that means everyone heard. I watched Lily's face. I watched the moment she understood that something had happened, that she had been weighed and the verdict was not favorable, even if she couldn't name the mechanism. Her expression didn't crumble exactly. She was too composed for that. She had always been a child who processed things inward first, but her hands stilled. The strawberry fell off the fork. Daniel set down his glass. He looked at Piper with the calm attention of someone who has all the time in the world. Then he looked at Diane. "I think you owe my daughter an apology," he said. Not loudly, not with heat. With the precision of someone who has measured exactly what is required and is delivering exactly that, nothing more, nothing less. Diane's smile didn't waver, but something behind it shifted. Piper was just making an observation. She said she was repeating something she heard from you, Daniel said. Which means the apology should also come from you. One of the friends looked away. Marcus, who had come back to the table during all of this, was very still. Diane set down her champagne flute. Daniel, I really don't think. We drove 3 hours, he said. We sat at this table. We have been gracious. He glanced at Lily, who was watching him with wide eyes. She's 9 years old, Diane. The silence that followed lasted long enough to become a statement. Diane did not apologize. That told me everything I hadn't been certain of before. Daniel turned to Lily. He reached over and straightened the strap of her dress with one hand. A small gesture, unhurried, deliberate. You look beautiful, he said. You've always had excellent taste. Lily's chin came up about 1/4 of an inch. It was enough. I pushed back my chair. I think we're going to head out, I said. I kept my voice even. I wasn't performing composure. I actually felt it in the way that sometimes arrives when the thing you've been dreading has finally happened and turned out to be survivable. Thank you for having us, Diane. Marcus walked us to the car. He hugged Daniel and looked pained and said something quiet that I couldn't hear. He crouched down in front of Lily. Your dress is great, he said. I want you to know that. I know, Lily said. The party had really good strawberries, though. Marcus laughed. It was the only genuine sound I'd heard all afternoon. We drove back the way we came, the house disappearing behind us the same slow way it had appeared, gradually without drama. Lily had her headphones back on within the first 10 minutes. I watched the trees replace the manicured landscaping through the passenger window. Are you okay? Daniel asked me. Yes, I said. And this time I believed it. I thought about Lily at the table, the moment her hands went still, the strawberry falling. And then I thought about the 1/4 inch her chin had moved when her father told her she was beautiful. I thought about how those 2 moments would live in her, both of them, and which one she would remember longer. I knew children, I knew how memory worked at 9. She would remember the chin. 2 days after the party, Marcus called Daniel. I was in the kitchen and could hear one side of the conversation, mostly listening sounds and an occasional word. When Daniel came in, he set his phone on the counter and stood there for a moment. Diane had a conversation with Piper, he said. Apparently, it got uncomfortable. Piper cried. I poured coffee and didn't say anything. Marcus said she's been in a difficult headspace since we left. Some of the other guests made comments before we'd even gotten to the gate. I thought about the woman with the clipboard. I thought about the table near the kitchen entrance. I thought about the word sweet with a splinter in it. How is Lily? He asked. I thought about my daughter that morning, eating cereal and reading a book she carried to the table, legs swinging, completely absorbed, hair slightly messy, wearing a shirt with a small strawberry print on the pocket that she'd picked out herself at a store that did not require reservations. She's perfect, I said. And the thing about that answer, the thing I understood more clearly than I ever had before, sitting in my own kitchen with my coffee going warm in my hands, was that it had nothing to do with the dress or the school or the driveway length or the table placement near the kitchen door. It had to do with the chin, the 1/4 inch, the way a child learns who she is, not from the people who try to diminish her, but from the people who stand in the room and refuse to let the diminishment land. I used to worry before parties like that one about what we didn't have. The right car, the right labels, the right school with the right name that opened the right doors. I would stand in front of my closet and make calculations about what impression I was capable of making and whether it would be enough. I didn't do that anymore. Or rather, I understood now that I had been calculating the wrong thing entirely. The right thing to calculate is simpler and harder and has nothing to do with any store, regular or otherwise. It's what you say when your 9-year-old's hands go still. It's how fast you say it. It's whether she hears underneath the words that the measurement being applied to her is not one she is obligated to accept. Lily had heard it. I had watched her hear it. That was the thing I drove home with, past the gate and down the long road and back into the landscape I recognized, the one that didn't require a clipboard to enter. That was the thing I carried into our kitchen and our week and our ordinary, unimpressive, irreplaceable life. The dress was from a regular store,